The scream that tore from Bridget Cooper's throat was primal, rising above the crackling of the hot iron as it seared her flesh. It was May 1871, and on this remote ranch outside Central City, Colorado, she learned the true meaning of being treated as property. The wound on her shoulder blade a crude letter W for her owner. Warren Blackburn smoldered against her skin. She had been his property for 3 years now, purchased when her father's debts had mounted after the war. Warren had promised her father she would be well treated as a housekeeper. Those promises, like so many in the untamed West, had proven hollow. There, Warren spat, tossing the branding iron aside. Now everyone will know who you belong to if you try to run again. His weathered face twisted with cruel satisfaction as he nodded to his foreman. Lock her up. No food today. Bridget bit back another scream as the foreman roughly pulled her to her feet, the movement sending fresh waves of agony across her back. At 22, she had already endured more than most women twice her age. Her once vibrant auburn hair hung limp around her face, and her green eyes, once bright with hope, had dulled with the reality of her existence. "Please," she whispered, though she knew her pleas would fall on deaf ears. Warren Blackburn had built his cattle empire through ruthlessness. A man who branded his livestock wouldn't hesitate to brand a woman he considered his property. The small shed that served as her prison was dark and stifling in the spring heat. Bridget collapsed onto the dirt floor, careful not to let her back touch anything. The tears she'd held back now flowed freely, mixing with the dust beneath her. "God help me," she whispered to the empty space around her. But in 3 years, God had not answered her prayers. She was beginning to wonder if he even heard them anymore. 30 miles away, Adam Prescott guided his horse along the dusty trail leading into Central City. The war had left him with little besides his horse, his rifle, and the skills he'd honed as a cavalry scout. At 28, his face already bore the weathered lines of a man who'd seen too much, but his eyes remained clear and observant. The bustling mining town of Central City had grown considerably since the gold rush days. Now, in 1871, it was settling into a more established rhythm, with proper businesses replacing the hastily constructed tents and shacks of earlier years. Adam's gaze swept over the main street as he rode in, noting the saloon, the general store, and the small sheriff's office. He had come seeking work. The cattle drives were starting soon, and experienced hands were always needed. His time in the cavalry had made him an excellent horseman, and he'd worked cattle before the war. It wasn't the life he'd imagined for himself, but it was honest work. Adam dismounted in front of the Red Mountain Saloon, tethering his horse to the hitching post. Inside, the air was thick with tobacco smoke and the smell of cheap whiskey. A few early patrons hunched over tables or leaned against the bar. It was here that men often came to hire hands for the upcoming drives. "What can I get you?" asked the barkeep, a heavy-set man with a handlebar mustache. "Whiskey," Adam replied, placing a coin on the counter. "And information. I'm looking for work." The barkeep nodded, pouring the amber liquid into a glass. "Several outfits hiring. Blackburn's got the biggest spread around here, always needs hands for his spring drive." Adam took a sip of his whiskey, savoring the burn. "Blackburn, you say? What kind of man is he to work for?" The barkeep's expression tightened slightly. "Pays fair, runs a tight operation." He leaned closer. "But he's a hard man, Prescott. Not everyone takes to his methods." Adam nodded thoughtfully. In his experience, such careful words often hid darker truths. Still, work was work, and he needed the money. "Where would I find him?" he asked. "His ranch is about 30 miles northeast. Can't miss it, biggest operation in the territory, or you can talk to his foreman, Mills. He'll be in town tomorrow to pick up supplies." Adam thanked the man and finished his drink. He secured a room for the night, planning to meet this foreman the next day. As he lay in the narrow bed that night, he thought about what might await him at Blackburn's ranch. He'd worked for difficult men before the army had plenty of them. But something in the barkeep's tone had given him pause. Morning came with the typical bustle of a town waking to commerce. Adam made his way to the general store, where he'd been told Blackburn's foreman would appear. He didn't have to wait long. Jeb Mills was a barrel-chested man with small, calculating eyes that seemed to assess everything in terms of its value or threat. He was supervising the loading of supplies when Adam approached him. "Mr. Mills, I heard you might be hiring for the spring drive." Mills looked him up and down. "You got experience. 5 years before the war, 2 seasons since." "I was cavalry during the fighting, know my way around horses and trouble." Mills nodded. "We can always use good men. Pays $30 a month plus found. Drive starts in 3 weeks." "Fair enough," Adam said, extending his hand. "Adam Prescott." Mills shook it firmly. "Be at the ranch by week's end. We start breaking the new horses before the drive." Adam agreed and spent the rest of the day gathering his own supplies. By nightfall, he decided to head out early the next morning. No point in spending money on another night in town when he could be making his way to the job. Dawn was just breaking when he rode out, the mountains to the west still shrouded in darkness while the eastern sky lightened to a pale blue. The trail was clear enough and he made good time across the rolling landscape. It was midday when he heard the gunshot. Adam reined in his horse, instantly alert. His hand moved to his rifle as he scanned the terrain. The shot had come from somewhere to the east off the main trail. Another shot rang out, followed by a distant shout. Without hesitation, Adam turned his horse toward the sound. Years of cavalry scouting had taught him to investigate rather than avoid potential trouble. As he crested a small rise, he saw the source of the commotion. A woman was running across an open meadow, her dress torn and bloody at the back. Behind her, 2 mounted men were giving chase, one firing a pistol into the air. "Stop or the next one's in your back," one of the men shouted. The woman stumbled but kept running, her movements desperate and pained. Even from a distance, Adam could tell she was weakening. He spurred his horse forward, covering ground quickly. The pursuers were so focused on the woman they didn't notice him until he was nearly upon them. "That's far enough," Adam called out, his rifle now raised and steady. The men wheeled around, startled. The one with the pistol started to raise it, but something in Adam's expression made him reconsider. "This ain't your business, stranger," said the other man, who Adam recognized as Mills, the foreman he'd met just the day before. "That's Blackburn property trying to escape." "Property?" Adam's voice was dangerously quiet. "Looks like a woman to me." "She belongs to the ranch," Mills insisted. "Got the brand to prove it." Those words hit Adam like a physical blow. In his years, he'd seen many cruelties. The war had been full of them, but the idea of branding a human being like cattle made his blood run cold. The woman had collapsed now, her strength finally giving out. She lay curled on her side in the grass, her body shaking with exhaustion or fear. Adam couldn't tell which. "I don't see any cattle running here," Adam said evenly. "Just men hunting a woman. Where I come from, that's not how decent folks behave." Mills scowled. "You just cost yourself a job, Prescott. Seems I've been spared working for the devil," Adam replied. "Now back off. She's coming with me." The other man, growing impatient, made a sudden move for his gun. Adam fired a warning shot that kicked up dust just inches from the man's boot. "Next one won't miss," he promised, his voice steady. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Mills jerked his head at his companion. "Come on, Hank. Blackburn will send more men when we tell him. She won't get far." They retreated slowly, Mills's eyes burning with anger. Adam kept his rifle trained on them until they were well out of range, then quickly dismounted and approached the fallen woman. Up close, he could see she was young, perhaps in her early 20s. Her auburn hair was matted with dirt and sweat, and her simple dress was torn and bloodied. When he gently touched her shoulder, she flinched violently. "Easy," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name's Adam Prescott." The woman's green eyes were wide with fear and pain as she looked up at him. "They'll come back," she whispered. "More of them. Can you stand?" Adam asked, glancing in the direction the men had gone. "We need to move quickly." She nodded weakly, and he helped her to her feet, noticing how she winced when he accidentally touched her back. When she was standing, he saw what had caused the blood on her dress, a crude, burned letter W visible through the torn fabric. Anger surged through him at the sight of the brand. "You're not property anymore," he said firmly. "Not cattle to be marked and claimed. Come with me if you want to stay free." "I'm Bridget," she said, her voice gaining a little strength. "Bridget Cooper." "Well, Miss Cooper, let's get you somewhere safe." He helped her onto his horse, then mounted behind her, careful not to press against her wounded back. "There's a trading post about 15 miles west. We can get supplies there and figure out our next move." As they rode away from Blackburn's land, Bridget remained tense in front of him. Adam couldn't blame her after what she'd endured. Trust wouldn't come easily. "How long were you there?" he asked after they'd put several miles between themselves and the pursuers. 3 years, she replied, her voice barely audible over the sound of the horse's hooves. "My father owed Blackburn money. When he couldn't pay, Blackburn took me as payment. Said I'd work as a housekeeper until the debt was settled." She gave a bitter laugh. The debt was never going to be settled. Adam's jaw tightened. He'd heard of such arrangements before, though they were usually disguised as legitimate employment. Clearly, Blackburn had dropped even that pretense. "The brand?" he asked gently. Bridget's shoulders tensed further. "Yesterday, I tried to run last week. They caught me. Blackburn said he needed to make sure everyone knew who I belonged to if I ever got away again." Her voice broke, like I was one of his cattle. Adam fought down the rage that threatened to overwhelm him. "No one's going to treat you like that again," he promised. "Not while I'm alive." They reached the trading post as dusk was falling. It was a small, isolated outpost that served travelers and the scattered homesteads in the area. The proprietor, an older man named Samuel Dawson, took one look at Bridget's condition and ushered them inside without questions. "My wife can tend to her," he said, calling to the back room. "Martha, we need your help." Martha Dawson emerged, a kind-faced woman with silver-streaked hair. Her eyes widened at the sight of Bridget, but she quickly composed herself and led the young woman to a back room. "That's Blackburn's work, isn't it?" Samuel asked quietly once the women were gone. Adam nodded grimly. "You know him. Know of him. Man's built himself a kingdom out here, and he rules it like the worst kind of tyrant. Most folks are too afraid to cross him." Samuel studied Adam's face. "You're not from around here. Just passing through. Was actually headed to Blackburn's looking for work when I found her being hunted down." Samuel shook his head. "You've made an enemy today, son. Blackburn doesn't forgive those who interfere with his property." Adam's expression hardened. "She's not property." "No," Samuel agreed, "she isn't. But trying to convince Blackburn of that might get you killed." He paused, considering. "You got somewhere to take her. Somewhere safe?" "Not yet," Adam admitted. "I was hoping we could stay here tonight while I figure that out." Samuel nodded slowly. "You can have the back room, but you'll need to be gone by morning. Blackburn's men come through here regular-like." "I can't be seen helping you." "I understand. Thank you." Martha emerged from the back room carrying Bridget's bloodied dress. "I've cleaned and dressed her wound," she said. "Gave her one of my old dresses. The poor child is exhausted." "How bad is it?" Adam asked. Martha's expression darkened. "Bad enough. The brand will scar, but it's the wound to her spirit that concerns me more. That man has broken something in her." She placed a hand on Adam's arm. "Whatever you're planning, young man, make sure it includes time for her to heal inside and out." Adam nodded solemnly. "I will." That night, after a simple meal that Bridget barely touched, Adam spread his bedroll on the floor of the small room while Bridget took the narrow cot. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the windows of the trading post. "Where will we go?" Bridget asked into the darkness, her voice small. Adam stared at the ceiling, considering their options. "I have a friend from the war who settled near Denver. He owes me a favor. We could head there. It's far enough from Blackburn's reach." "He'll never stop looking for me," she said, and Adam could hear the fear in her voice. "The brand. He said it was so everyone would know I was his if I ran." Adam sat up, looking at her outline in the dim light filtering through the window. Bridget, listen to me. A brand doesn't make you someone's property. You're a free woman, and we're going to make sure you stay that way. There was a long pause before she spoke again. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. It was a fair question, one Adam had asked himself as they'd ridden away from Blackburn's men. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. And because no one deserves to be treated like you were. Another silence fell between them, broken only by the wind and the occasional creak of the building. Thank you, she finally whispered, for seeing me as a person. Those words stayed with Adam long after Bridget's breathing had evened into sleep. He lay awake, planning their route to Denver and thinking about the woman whose life had suddenly become intertwined with his own. There was something about her, a resilience beneath the fear that stirred something protective in him. Dawn came too quickly. Samuel provided them with supplies, food, medical supplies for Bridget's wound, and a rough map showing lesser-known trails. Blackburn's men were in Central City last night asking questions, Samuel told them as they prepared to leave. Word spreading about a woman with his brand running with a stranger. They'll be watching the main roads. Adam nodded grimly. We'll stick to the backcountry. Thank you for everything. Martha pressed a small bundle into Bridget's hands. Some extra clothing and a few herbs for the pain, she explained. Stay strong, child. They set out as the sun was just beginning to crest the mountains, taking a narrow trail that wound through dense pine forests. Adam kept a careful pace, mindful of Bridget's injury and the need to conserve his horse's strength. They would need to cover as much ground as possible before Blackburn's men picked up their trail. Did you always want to be a cowboy? Bridget asked after they'd been riding in silence for several hours. Adam smiled slightly at the unexpected question. I grew up on a small farm in Pennsylvania, came west after my parents died, looking for something different. The war interrupted those plans for a while. You fought for the Union, she asked. Cavalry scout, he confirmed. Spent most of my time behind Confederate lines gathering information. Bridget fell silent for a moment. My father fought for the South, she said quietly, lost everything after the war. That's how we ended up out here. He thought there'd be opportunities to start over. And instead he found Blackburn, Adam said, understanding now how she'd ended up in such a terrible situation. Bridget nodded. Father died a year after he gave me to Blackburn. Consumption took him. I think it was partly from the shame. I'm sorry, Adam said, and meant it. Whatever side her father had fought for, the aftermath of the war had destroyed countless lives on both sides. They continued through the day, stopping only briefly to rest and eat. By nightfall, they had covered nearly 20 miles, following game trails and old Indian paths that Samuel had marked on the map. They made camp in a small clearing beside a stream. Adam built a small fire, careful to keep it low so the smoke wouldn't be visible from a distance. While Bridget tended to her wound with Martha's herbs, Adam scouted the surrounding area. Ensuring they were truly alone when he returned, he found Bridget staring into the fire, her face drawn with pain and exhaustion. We should reach a small settlement by tomorrow afternoon, he told her, settling down across from her. We can rest there properly, maybe find a horse for you. She nodded absently, still gazing into the flames. Bridget, Adam said gently, what happened at Blackburn's? It wasn't your fault. None of it. She looked up at him then, her green eyes reflecting the firelight. I know that in my head, she said softly. But here, she pressed a hand to her heart, I still feel the shame of it, being treated like an animal, being owned. Adam wished he had the words to ease her pain. The brand doesn't define you, he said finally. It's just a mark on skin, not on your soul. Is it? She asked, her voice breaking slightly. Every time I feel the pain from it, I remember what I am, what he made me. What are you then? Adam challenged gently. Tell me who Bridget Cooper is. The question seemed to catch her off guard. She blinked, considering. I don't know anymore. Before Blackburn, I was a daughter, a friend. I loved books and music. I could make my father laugh even when times were hard. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. I was stubborn. Mother always said I had more determination than sense. Sounds like that determination kept you alive, Adam observed. Kept you fighting. Bridget's smile faded, until I couldn't fight anymore, until he broke me enough to put his mark on me. Yet here you are, Adam pointed out. Running. Fighting still. She looked at him then, really looked at him, as if seeing something new. I suppose I am, she said thoughtfully. They talked well into the night, Bridget gradually revealing more about her life before Blackburn, her childhood in Georgia. The difficult journey west with her father after the war, her dreams of someday having a home of her own again. Adam shared stories of his own. His time as a scout, the beauty and danger of the untamed territories he'd explored, the peace he'd found in the rhythms of ranch work after the chaos of war. It was the longest conversation Adam had had with anyone in years, and he found himself drawn to Bridget's quiet strength and the intelligence that shone through despite everything she'd endured. When they finally settled to sleep, Adam lying near the fire with his rifle close at hand, he felt a strange sense of purpose that had been missing from his life. Protecting Bridget, helping her rebuild her life, it gave meaning to his wandering existence. The next day brought rain, a steady drizzle that turned the trail muddy and slowed their progress. Adam fashioned a makeshift covering for Bridget from his oilskin coat, but they were both damp and chilled by midday. The settlement Samuel had marked on his map turned out to be little more than a cluster of cabins around a small trading post, similar to but larger than the Dawsons' place. Adam approached cautiously, aware that news of their flight could have reached even this isolated spot. The trading post was run by a taciturn man named Peterson, who eyed them suspiciously when they entered his store. "Don't get many strangers this time of year," he remarked as Adam purchased supplies. "Just passing through," Adam replied casually. "Headed to Denver," Peterson grunted. "You're a fair piece off the main trail then." "My wife enjoys the scenery," Adam improvised, nodding toward Bridget, who was examining a shelf of preserved goods. "Been promising to show her the mountains since we married." The lie seemed to satisfy Peterson, who became marginally more friendly. Yes, he had a horse for sale, an older mare, but sound. Yes, they could stay in the back room of the trading post for the night, for a price. No, he hadn't heard anything about a woman running from Blackburn, but then news traveled slow to these parts. Adam paid for the horse and their lodging, relieved to have secured both. The mare wasn't much to look at, a dun-colored animal with a somewhat sway-backed appearance, but her eyes were clear and her legs straight. She would do for their journey. That night, in the small back room of Peterson's trading post, Bridget helped Adam change the dressing on her brand. The wound was angry and red, but Martha's herbs had prevented infection from setting in. "Does it look very bad?" Bridget asked, unable to see the mark herself. Adam's fingers were gentle as he applied the salve Martha had given them. "It's healing," he said, not wanting to tell her how vivid and cruel the W looked against her pale skin. Bridget seemed to sense his evasion. "It's all right. I know it will always be there. I need to know what I'm carrying." Adam sighed. "It's clear enough what it is, but scars fade with time, Bridget, and this one will too, will it?" she asked softly. "Or will I always be the woman with Blackburn's brand?" "You'll be whoever you choose to be," Adam said firmly. "This mark doesn't own your future any more than Blackburn owns you." She turned to face him, studying his features in the dim light of the single lamp. "You really believe that, don't you, that I can just start over?" "I believe we all carry our scars," Adam said, "some visible, some not. But they're part of our story, not the whole of it." He thought of his own scars, the bullet wound in his thigh from Shiloh, the nightmares that still woke him sometimes. "The war taught me that." Bridget reached out hesitantly and touched his hand. "Thank you, not just for saving me, but for seeing a future I can't see yet." The touch of her fingers against his sent an unexpected warmth through Adam. For a moment, neither of them moved, connected by that simple contact and something deeper, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits who had both endured and survived. Then Bridget withdrew her hand, a flush coloring her cheeks. "We should get some rest. It's a long way to Denver still." Adam nodded, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, how intimate the small room felt. "You take the bed, I'll keep watch for a while." That night, as rain drummed steadily on the roof of the trading post, Adam found his thoughts returning again and again to Bridget. To her courage, her resilience, and the vulnerability that she allowed him to see. He had meant to help her reach safety and then continue on his own way. Now, he wasn't sure he could simply walk away once they reached Denver. Dawn broke clear and cold after the rain. They set out early, Bridget riding the mare while Adam led the way on his gelding. The terrain grew more rugged as they pushed westward, following the foothills of the Rockies rather than the more traveled routes through the plains. 3 days passed without incident. Bridget grew stronger each day, sitting straighter in the saddle despite the pain of her healing wound. She began to ask Adam to teach her about survival in the wilderness, how to read trails, how to find water, how to make fire. Adam taught her willingly, impressed by how quickly she learned. On the 4th day, as they crossed a high meadow dotted with early spring wildflowers, Bridget suddenly laughed, a sound Adam hadn't heard from her before. It transformed her face, bringing color to her cheeks and light to her eyes. "What is it?" he asked, smiling despite himself at her unexpected joy. She gestured around them at the vast landscape stretching to the horizon. "It's so beautiful, and I'm free to see it." She took a deep breath of the clear mountain air. "For 3 years, I could only look at the world through windows or when I was working in the yard. Now I can go anywhere." Her wonder at this simple freedom twisted something in Adam's heart. "Yes," he agreed softly, "you can go anywhere now." They made camp that night on a ridge overlooking a valley, where a small river wound like a silver ribbon in the twilight. Adam built a fire and prepared a simple meal of beans and jerky, supplemented with early spring greens that Bridget had gathered. As they ate, Bridget asked, "What will you do?" "After Denver, I mean." Adam hadn't thought much beyond getting Bridget to safety. "Find work, I suppose. There's always ranches needing hands." "You don't have a home to go back to?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not for a long time. I've been moving from job to job since the war." Bridget considered this. "Doesn't it get lonely, never staying in one place?" "Sometimes," Adam admitted, "but it's simpler. No attachments, no disappointments." Even as he said it, he realized how empty the words sounded. "No joy either," Bridget observed quietly. Adam looked at her across the fire, struck by the insight. "No," he agreed after a moment, "not much of that." They fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts as the fire crackled between them. Finally, Bridget spoke again. "I've been thinking about what I'll do in Denver," she clarified. "I can cook and clean, maybe find work as a housekeeper or in a boarding house." "You could," Adam agreed. "Or you could do something else entirely. What did you dream of before everything happened?" Bridget looked surprised by the question. "Dream of? I don't know." "I thought I might be a teacher someday. I always loved books." She smiled sadly. "Silly dreams now." "Why silly? Denver has schools. Growing towns always need teachers." She touched her back unconsciously. "Who would hire someone like me, with this mark?" "Someone who values intelligence and courage over unmarked skin," Adam said firmly. "Don't let Blackburn steal your dreams along with everything else, Bridget." She studied him for a long moment. "You're a surprising man, Adam Prescott. Most men I've known wouldn't encourage a woman to pursue such things." Adam shrugged. "The war changed a lot of things, made me see that life's too short to waste on other people's expectations." The conversation shifted then to lighter topics, funny stories from their childhoods, favorite books, places they'd like to see someday. Adam found himself laughing more than he had in years, drawn in by Bridget's quick wit, and the way her entire face lit up when she smiled. As the fire died down to embers, Adam realized with some surprise that he was happy, truly happy, for the first time in longer than he could remember. The feeling was so unexpected that he almost didn't recognize it at first. The next day brought them to a small town called Pine Creek, the last settlement they would encounter before reaching the outskirts of Denver territory. They approached cautiously, Adam, wary of Blackburn's reach even this far from his ranch. The town consisted of a single street lined with the usual establishments: a general store, a saloon, a small hotel, and a handful of other businesses. What caught Adam's attention immediately was the wanted poster tacked to the board outside the sheriff's office. His own face stared back at him, crudely sketched but recognizable enough. Below it, the words "wanted for theft and kidnapping" were printed in bold letters, along with an offer of $200 for his capture. Next to it was a similar poster for Bridget, describing her as stolen property with a reward of $300. Adam quickly tore down both posters, but the damage was done. Blackburn had spread his net wide, turning them from fugitives into outlaws with a price on their heads. "We can't stay here," he told Bridget, who had gone pale at the sight of the posters. "We'll circle around the town and continue west." They had just turned their horses when a voice called out, "Hold up there!" The sheriff of Pine Creek was approaching, hand resting on his holstered pistol. He was a middle-aged man with a salt and pepper beard and shrewd eyes that took in Adam's appearance and then Bridget's. "You folks just passing through?" he asked, his tone casual but his stance alert. "That's right," Adam replied, keeping his voice even. "Headed to Denver." The sheriff nodded slowly. "Interesting route you're taking. Most folks use the main road." "We prefer the scenery," Adam said, aware of how thin the excuse sounded. The sheriff's gaze shifted to Bridget, then back to Adam. "Mind if I ask your names?" Before Adam could answer, Bridget spoke up. "I'm Bridget Cooper and this is Adam Prescott, and yes, we're the ones on those posters." Her voice was steady, though Adam could see the fear in her eyes. "But the posters are lies. I'm not property, and Adam didn't kidnap me, he saved me." The sheriff's expression didn't change. "That's so." "And what exactly did he save you from, miss?" Bridget hesitated only a moment before turning in her saddle and lifting the back of her dress just enough to reveal the top of the brand, still raw and healing. "From the man who did this to me, Warren Blackburn." The sheriff's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the brand. He was silent for a long moment, then sighed heavily. "You'd better come with me. Not to the jail," he added quickly, seeing Adam's hand move toward his gun. "To my house. My wife will have my hide if I don't help you." Relief and suspicion warred within Adam. "How do we know we can trust you?" The sheriff's mouth twisted in a grim smile. "Because Warren Blackburn killed my brother 5 years ago over a land dispute, and I couldn't prove a damn thing. I've been waiting for a chance to see that bastard get what's coming to him." He extended his hand. "Sheriff Thomas Riley, and I think we have a lot to talk about." Riley's home was a modest 2-story house at the edge of town. His wife, Eleanor, was a no-nonsense woman who took one look at Bridget's exhausted state and ushered her upstairs to rest and bathe while the men talked. "Blackburn's got men watching all the main routes to Denver," Riley told Adam as they sat at the kitchen table. "Been offering rewards for information about you two for over a week now. Story is you stole one of his servants and some horses." "She's not a servant, and I didn't steal her," Adam said, anger rising in his voice. "She was trying to escape after he branded her like livestock." Riley nodded grimly. "I believe you. Blackburn's always skirted the edge of the law, but this is something else." He poured coffee for them both. "Problem is, he's got money and influence. His version of events will be the one most folks believe, especially with those rewards he's offering." "So what do we do?" Adam asked. "We can't stay here and we can't take the main routes to Denver," Riley considered for a moment. "There's an old mining trail that cuts through the mountains. It's rough going, not many use it these days, but it'll get you within a day's ride of Denver without crossing any of the usual routes. Will Blackburn know about it? Maybe, but he won't expect you to take it. Most folks wouldn't risk it this time of year. There's still snow in the higher passes." Riley paused. "You got a plan for when you reach Denver?" "Blackburn's influence reaches there too, though not as strong," Adam sighed. "Find my friend, get Bridget somewhere safe after that. I don't know. As long as Blackburn's hunting us, we'll never truly be free." Riley studied him thoughtfully. You know, there might be another way. If you could prove what Blackburn did the branding, the forced servitude that's illegal, even out here, with enough evidence he could be the one running. Adam looked up sharply. What kind of evidence? Testimonies from others he's mistreated. Records of his transactions. The brand itself is pretty damning. Riley leaned forward. My brother wasn't the only one Blackburn has wronged. There are others who would speak against him if they knew they weren't alone. The idea took root in Adam's mind. Fighting back instead of running, it was risky, but it offered a chance at true freedom, not just for Bridget, but for anyone else suffering under Blackburn's cruelty. It would be dangerous, Adam said, thinking aloud. Blackburn wouldn't go down without a fight. No, Riley agreed, but some fights are worth the risk. When Bridget came downstairs, freshly bathed and wearing a clean dress borrowed from a leaner, Adam and Riley presented the idea to her. Her reaction surprised Adam. Yes, she said without hesitation. I want to fight back. I want him to pay for what he's done not just to me, but to others. Her green eyes flashed with determination. I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid. It won't be easy, Adam warned. We'll still need to reach Denver safely, find others willing to testify, gather evidence. I know, Bridget said, but I'd rather face the danger fighting than spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. Riley nodded approvingly. I can give you names of people in Denver who might help, including a lawyer who's had his own run-ins with Blackburn. And I'll start gathering what evidence I can from this end. They spent the night at Riley's house, planning their journey and the steps they would take once they reached Denver. Alina provided them with fresh supplies and warmer clothing for the mountain passage. In the privacy of the small guest room, Bridget sat on the edge of the bed, her expression thoughtful. What if we fail? She asked Adam, who was checking his rifle by the window. What if Blackburn is too powerful? Adam set the rifle aside and sat beside her. Then we keep running. Find somewhere far enough away that his reach can't follow, but I don't think we'll fail. He took her hand in his, a gesture that felt both natural and significant. You're stronger than you know, Bridget, and you're not alone anymore. She looked down at their joined hands, then up at his face. No, she agreed softly. I'm not alone. There was something in her expression, a warmth, a connection that made Adam's heart beat faster. For a moment, he thought she might lean closer, that he might close the distance between them. Instead, she gently squeezed his hand and then released it. We should get some rest, she said. The mountain trail will be difficult. Adam nodded, trying to ignore the lingering warmth of her touch and the unexpected sense of disappointment at the moment's passing. You're right. Tomorrow will be a long day. They set out before dawn the next morning, Riley accompanying them to the trailhead. The old mining path was barely visible, overgrown in places and washed out in others, but it led steadily upward into the mountains. Follow it all the way over the pass, Riley instructed. It'll bring you down near Clear Creek. From there, it's a straight shot to Denver. He handed Adam a sealed letter. Give this to Nathaniel Harker when you get there. He's the lawyer I mentioned. Tell him Tom Riley says it's time to settle accounts with Blackburn. Adam tucked the letter into his coat. Thank you for everything. Riley tipped his hat. Good luck to you both, and when this is all over, consider coming back to Pine Creek. We could use good people like you too. The trail proved as challenging as Riley had warned. In places it narrowed to barely the width of a horse, with steep drops on one side and sheer rock faces on the other. The higher they climbed, the colder it grew, until patches of snow appeared beside the trail. Bridget handled the difficult terrain without complaint, guiding her mare with growing confidence. Adam found himself watching her with admiration, noting how far she had come from the terrified woman he had rescued just over a week ago. They made camp that night in a sheltered hollow, the wind howling through the pine trees around them. Despite the cold, Adam built only a small fire, wary of the light being visible from a distance. As they huddled close to the flames, Bridget said, I've been thinking about what Sheriff Riley said about coming back to Pine Creek after all this is over. Oh, Adam kept his tone neutral, though the idea of after had been much on his mind as well. It seems like a nice town. The kind of place where someone could start fresh. She glanced at him. What do you think? Could you see yourself settling somewhere like that? The question carried weight beyond its simple words. Adam considered it carefully. I've been moving so long, I'm not sure I remember how to stay in one place, he admitted. But Pine Creek has its appeal, he paused. Especially if the right people were there. Bridget's cheeks colored slightly at his words. The right people can make anywhere feel like home, I suppose. Yes, Adam agreed quietly. They can. The conversation drifted to other topics, but something had shifted between them, an acknowledgement, however tentative, that they were beginning to envision a future that included each other. The next day brought them to the highest part of the pass. Snow covered the ground here, and the air was thin and sharp in their lungs. Their progress slowed as the horses picked their way carefully through the treacherous terrain. It was nearing midday when Adam heard the distant sound of hoofbeats on the trail behind them. He reined in his horse, signaling for Bridget to do the same. What is it? She asked, instantly alert to the danger. Riders, coming up fast. Adam's mind raced through their options. The trail ahead was too exposed they would be easy targets. Behind them lay the pursuers. The only choice was to leave the trail. This way, he said, guiding his horse toward a dense stand of pines. They pushed through the trees, moving as quickly as the thick undergrowth allowed. The sound of the pursuers grew louder, then began to fade as they passed the point where Adam and Bridget had left the trail. They'll realize we've gone off trail soon enough, Adam said grimly. We need to find somewhere to make a stand or lose them completely. They continued through the forest, climbing steadily upward until they reached a rocky outcropping that offered a view of the trail below. 3 riders were visible now, moving slowly as they searched for signs of their quarry. Adam recognized Mills among them. Blackburn's men, Bridget whispered, her face pale. Adam nodded, gauging distances and options. They'll split up to search. We can't outrun them in this terrain, not with the horses. So we fight? Bridget asked, and Adam was struck by the resolve in her voice. If we have to. He scanned their surroundings. But first, we try to lose them. There's a ridgeline ahead. If we can reach it, we might be able to find a place to hide until they give up the search. They left the horses concealed in a thicket and continued on foot, moving from cover to cover across the rocky slope. The going was treacherous. Loose shale threatened to send them sliding down the mountainside with every step. They had nearly reached the ridgeline when a shout from below indicated their pursuers had found their trail. Adam pulled Bridget behind a large boulder as a rifle shot echoed through the mountains. Stay down, he ordered, peering around the edge of the boulder. Mills and one of his companions were making their way up the slope, while the third man remained with the horses. Adam, Bridget said urgently, there's a cave entrance just beyond that stand of pines. She pointed to a dark opening barely visible among the rocks and trees. Good eye, Adam said. We'll make a run for it on my signal. Ready? Bridget nodded, her expression determined despite the fear in her eyes. Now. Adam led the way, zigzagging across the open ground as more shots rang out behind them. They reached the pines as bullets splintered bark around them, then scrambled the final distance to the cave entrance. The opening was narrow but widened once they were inside. The cave extended back into darkness, the air noticeably cooler within. How far do you think it goes? Bridget asked, breathing hard from their run. No telling. These mountains are full of old mine shafts and natural caves. Adam peered back toward the entrance. They saw where we went. They'll be here soon. What do we do? Adam considered their options. They could try to hide deeper in the cave, but if it was a dead end, they'd be trapped. They could make a stand at the entrance, but they were outgunned and outnumbered. We need to even the odds, he decided. Wait here. Before Bridget could protest, Adam moved stealthily back to the cave entrance and positioned himself behind a large rock. He didn't have to wait long. Mills appeared first, rifle at the ready as he approached the cave. Adam waited until the man was fully exposed, then fired a single shot that caught Mills in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending his rifle clattering to the ground. The second man immediately took cover, firing blindly toward Adam's position. The shots echoed deafeningly in the confined space of the cave entrance. Adam ducked back as bullets ricocheted off the rocks around him. He counted the shots 5, 6, 7, knowing the man would need to reload soon. When the firing paused, Adam leaned out and fired twice in quick succession. He was rewarded with a cry of pain and the sound of someone stumbling back. "Mills," the man called out. "I'm hit." Adam used the distraction to dart forward and grab Mills's fallen rifle before retreating back to the cave. Mills himself was crawling toward cover, leaving a trail of blood on the rocky ground. "Daniel, get back to the horses," Mills shouted to his wounded companion. "Bring Jackson, go," the wounded man staggered away, clutching his arm. Mills, finding shelter behind a boulder, called out, "Prescott, I know you're in there. There's no way out." "There's always a way out, Mills," Adam replied, checking the ammunition in the captured rifle. "Unlike the women Blackburn keeps prisoner. The girl is Blackburn property, fair and square. Her father signed her over." "People aren't property," Adam called back, "and I've got a feeling the law might be interested in a man who brands human beings." There was a pause before Mills responded. "Blackburn owns half the lawmen in the territory. You think they'll side with a kidnapper and a runaway?" "I think they'll side with justice when all the facts come out," Adam said. "How many others has Blackburn branded, Mills? How many people has he owned?" Another silence, longer this time. When Mills spoke again, his voice was strained, whether from pain or emotion, Adam couldn't tell. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Prescott. Blackburn will never stop hunting her, or you." Then maybe it's time someone hunted him instead. Inside the cave, Bridget had moved up beside Adam. "The third man will be here soon," she whispered. "We need to move." Adam nodded. "There's a way up the slope behind Mills. If we can get past him, we can make it to the ridgeline." "How? He'll see us the moment we leave the cave." Adam considered, then said, "I'll create a distraction. When I do, you run for that cluster of pines to the north." He pointed to a dense stand of trees about 50 yards away. "I'll cover you, then follow." Bridget shook her head. "No, we go together or not at all." "Bridget, I'm not leaving you behind," she said firmly. "We need another plan." Adam was about to argue when he noticed something, a small stream of water trickling along the cave floor, disappearing into a crevice at the back. "Where there's water, there's a path," he said, more to himself than to Bridget. He moved deeper into the cave, following the water's course. The passage narrowed but remained passable. In the dim light filtering from the entrance, Adam could make out that the cave continued downward, following the natural flow of the water. "This might lead out somewhere else," he told Bridget. "Mining caves often have multiple exits for ventilation and escape." "It's worth trying," she agreed. "Better than facing Mills and his reinforcements." Adam retrieved his saddlebags, which contained their supplies, and they started down the passage, using a small tin lamp from his gear to light their way. The cave descended steadily, the walls slick with moisture and the air growing colder. They had been moving for perhaps 15 minutes when they heard the faint sound of pursuit echoing from behind them. Mills and his companions had entered the cave. "They're following the same trail we are," Bridget whispered. Adam increased their pace, aware that the narrow confines of the cave would make a confrontation even more dangerous. The passage continued to twist and descend, occasionally branching. Adam chose their path by following the most prominent flow of water, reasoning that it would eventually lead to an exit. The sound of pursuit grew fainter as the cave system grew more complex. Adam hoped their pursuers would take a wrong turn in the labyrinthine passages. After what seemed like hours but was likely less than one, they noticed a change, a faint breeze stirring the stale cave air. The passage began to widen, and the ceiling rose until they could stand upright comfortably. "I think we're getting close to another exit," Adam said, his voice hushed but hopeful. The breeze grew stronger, carrying with it the scent of pine and open air. The passage curved sharply, and then, ahead of them, they saw a sliver of daylight shining through a narrow opening. The exit was smaller than the entrance they had used, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Adam went first, pushing their supplies ahead of him, then turning to help Bridget. They emerged on a steep, wooded slope on the other side of the ridge from where they had entered. The sun was already low in the west. They had spent longer in the cave than Adam had realized. "We need to keep moving," he said, getting his bearings. "We lost our horses, but if we head southeast, we should reach the main trail to Denver by morning." Bridget nodded, her face smudged with dirt but her eyes bright with the triumph of escape. "Do you think they are still following us?" "Mills won't give up easily," Adam said. "But they'll have a hard time finding which way we went in that cave system. It should buy us some time." They set off down the slope, moving as quickly as safety allowed through the gathering twilight. The terrain was difficult, steep in places, thick with underbrush in others, but they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that safety lay ahead if they could only reach it. Night had fallen completely when Adam finally called a halt. They had reached a small clearing beside a stream, not ideal for a defensive position, but they needed rest and water. "We'll stop here for a few hours," Adam decided. "Take turns keeping watch." They ate a cold meal from their supplies. There would be no fire tonight, and Bridget insisted on taking the first watch despite her exhaustion. Adam was too tired to argue, settling with his back against a tree, his rifle across his knees. "Wake me in 2 hours," he told her. "Sooner if you hear anything." Bridget nodded, sitting across from him with determined alertness. As Adam closed his eyes, he heard her soft voice. "Thank you," she said, "for not leaving me behind in that cave, for treating me as an equal." Adam opened his eyes to look at her, this remarkable woman who had endured so much yet retained such strength. "You are my equal," he said simply. "In courage and determination, perhaps my better." In the moonlight filtering through the trees, he saw her smile, a genuine, warm smile that transformed her face and sent an unexpected surge of emotion through him. In that moment, Adam realized that what he felt for Bridget had grown beyond the desire to protect her, beyond even admiration for her resilience. He was falling in love with her. The realization should have alarmed him. Love was a complication he hadn't sought, a vulnerability he couldn't afford while they were still in danger. Yet instead of alarm, he felt a strange sense of rightness, as if a puzzle piece had finally slipped into place. "Get some rest," Bridget said softly, unaware of his epiphany. "I'll keep us safe." And somehow, despite everything, Adam believed her. He closed his eyes and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. The journey to Denver took 3 more days on foot. They rejoined the main trail cautiously, wary of Blackburn's men, but encountered only ordinary travelers, traders, miners, and families heading to the growing city. Denver itself was a bustling metropolis. Compared to the small settlements, they had passed through a city of brick and wood buildings, crowded streets, and the constant noise of construction as new structures rose to accommodate the swelling population. Adam led them to a modest boarding house on the outskirts of town, where they could secure lodging without drawing too much attention. The proprietress, Mrs. Hollister, was a widow who asked few questions beyond whether they could pay for their rooms. "We need to find Nathaniel Harker," Adam told Bridget once they were settled. "Riley's letter might be our best chance at building a case against Blackburn." Harker's law office was located near the courthouse in the heart of Denver. The lawyer himself was younger than Adam had expected, perhaps in his mid-30s, with keen blue eyes and a thoughtful demeanor that suggested he weighed his words carefully before speaking. He read Riley's letter in silence, his expression growing more serious with each line. When he finished, he looked up at Adam and Bridget with new interest. "Tom Riley and I have been corresponding about Warren Blackburn for some time," Harker said, setting the letter aside. "But this," He gestured toward Bridget, clearly referring to her brand without requiring her to show it. "This goes beyond anything we've documented before." "There are others," Bridget said quietly. "At least 3 women I know of who were acquired the same way I was. And men, 2 laborers who couldn't pay their debts." Harker nodded grimly. "Blackburn's been walking a fine line between legal indenture and illegal slavery for years, but branding crosses that line definitively." He turned to Adam. "Riley says you're willing to help build a case." "More than willing," Adam confirmed. "Blackburn has men searching for us even now. The only way we'll ever be truly free is if he's brought to justice." "It won't be easy," Harker warned. "Blackburn has money and influence. Many people owe him favors or are afraid to cross him." "But not everyone," Bridget interjected. "There must be others willing to speak against him if they knew they weren't alone." Harker considered this. "Perhaps. I know of a few former employees who might talk if approached carefully." He looked at Bridget with compassion. "Are you prepared for what this will mean? To testify publicly to show your brand as evidence?" Bridget's chin lifted slightly. "I am. I want Blackburn to face what he's done to me and to others. I won't hide in shame for his crimes." Adam felt a surge of pride at her words. The frightened woman he had rescued was gone, replaced by someone determined to fight not just for her own freedom but for justice. Harker seemed equally impressed. "Very well. We'll need to gather testimonies, documents if possible. And we'll need to convince the territorial authorities to investigate, which means we need enough evidence that they can't ignore it." "Where do we start?" Adam asked. "With the people I mentioned, former employees who left under difficult circumstances. And Riley will be working from his end to find others who have had run-ins with Blackburn." Harker paused. "But you should be aware Blackburn will know what we're doing as soon as we start asking questions. He has eyes and ears everywhere." "We'll be careful," Adam promised. "But we won't be intimidated." Over the next 2 weeks, Adam and Bridget worked closely with Harker, building their case against Blackburn piece by piece. They met with former ranch hands who spoke of brutal working conditions and punishments for perceived infractions. They found a shopkeeper who had been forced to sell his business to cover a debt that somehow never decreased despite his payments. Most significantly, they located another woman who bore Blackburn's brand, a widow named Clara who had been purchased to settle her late husband's accounts and had eventually escaped to Denver. Through it all, Adam and Bridget grew closer, their shared purpose strengthening the bond between them. They spent long days working with Harker and evenings discussing their progress at a small cafe near their boarding house. Sometimes, in rare moments of respite, they explored Denver together, visiting the public gardens, attending a concert in the town square, browsing books at a small shop run by an elderly couple from Boston. In these moments, Adam could almost imagine a future beyond their current struggle, a life where he and Bridget could simply be together without fear or the shadow of the past hanging over them. He found himself watching her when she wasn't looking, memorizing the way her eyes lit up when she smiled or the small crease that appeared between her brows when she was deep in thought. He had not spoken of his feelings, nor had she. The danger they still faced made such conversations seem premature, a luxury they couldn't yet afford. But there were moments, a lingering touch when passing documents, the way she sometimes sought his gaze across a room, the comfortable silence they could share without awkwardness that made him hope she might feel the same. Their work was not without setbacks. Several potential witnesses backed out, afraid of Blackburn's retribution. Documents that might have proven Blackburn's illegal activities mysteriously disappeared from county records. Most concerning, Adam twice spotted men he recognized from Blackburn's ranch watching the law office or following them at a distance. "He knows what we're doing," Adam told Harker after the second such sighting. "It's only a matter of time before he makes a move against us." Harker nodded grimly. "We need to accelerate our timeline. I've been in touch with Judge Holloway. He's one of the few in the territorial court I trust completely." He's agreed to review our evidence and issue warrants if he deems it sufficient. When, Bridget asked, tomorrow, we'll present everything we have. It may not be as much as I'd like, but with your testimony and Clara's, plus the physical evidence of the branding, Harker sighed, it will have to be enough. That night, in the small parlor of the boarding house, Adam found Bridget sitting alone by the window, staring out at the rain that had been falling steadily since sunset. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" he asked, taking the chair beside her. She nodded without looking away from the window. "I've been ready since the moment you found me running across that meadow." She turned to him then, her green eyes serious. "What happens after, Adam? If we succeed, if Blackburn is arrested and charged, what then?" The question hung between them, laden with meanings beyond the obvious. Adam chose his words carefully. "That depends, I suppose, on what you want to do, where you want to go." "And if what I want is to stay," she asked softly, "here in Denver, or perhaps return to Pine Creek as Sheriff Riley suggested?" Adam felt his heart quicken at the implication in her words. "Then I would ask if you'd allow me to stay with you," he said, his voice low and earnest. "Because I've discovered something in these past weeks, Bridget. I don't want to return to a life of wandering, not if it means wandering without you." Bridget's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment Adam feared he had misread the signals, spoken too soon. Then she reached out and took his hand, her fingers warm against his. "I was hoping you would say that," she admitted. "I've been afraid to speak of the future, afraid to hope for too much. But when I imagine what comes after all this, I can't imagine it without you, Adam." He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Then we have something else to fight for tomorrow," he said. "Not just justice, but our future." Bridget smiled, and in that smile, Adam saw all the hope and promise he'd been afraid to acknowledge. Tomorrow they would face whatever came together, and the day after that, and all the days that followed. The next morning dawned clear after the rain, the streets of Denver gleaming in the early light. Adam and Bridget met Harker at his office, where Clara and the other witnesses who had remained committed to testifying were already gathered. "Judge Holloway will see us at 9, Harker informed them, sorting through the documents they had assembled. "He's cleared his schedule for the entire morning." The walk to the courthouse was tense, everyone acutely aware of the gravity of what they were about to do. Adam kept close to Bridget, scanning the streets for any sign of Blackburn's men. The courthouse itself was a relatively new building, constructed of red brick with white stone trim, a symbol of the growing authority of law in the still wild territory. Judge Holloway received them in his chambers, a dignified man in his 60s with a reputation for fairness that had earned him respect throughout Colorado. He listened without interruption as Harker presented their case, examining the documents and witness statements with careful attention. When it came time for personal testimony, Bridget went first. Without hesitation, she told her story how her father's debts had led to her being sold to Blackburn, the 3 years of servitude, the branding that had finally prompted her escape. When asked, she turned and lowered the back of her dress just enough to reveal the branded W that had finally begun to heal into a scar. The judge's expression remained impassive, but Adam saw his fingers tighten on his pen until his knuckles whitened. Clara testified next, her story similar enough to Bridget's to establish a pattern. She too revealed her brand, older and more faded but unmistakable. By the time the last witness had spoken, the morning was well advanced. Judge Holloway sat in silence for several long moments, reviewing his notes. Finally, he looked up. "Mr. Harker, I have seen enough to justify immediate action. I am issuing warrants for the arrest of Warren Blackburn on charges of false imprisonment, assault, and violation of the 13th Amendment's prohibition on involuntary servitude." He turned to Bridget and Clara. "You ladies have shown remarkable courage. I assure you that your bravery will not be in vain." Relief swept through the room. Harker thanked the judge and began gathering their materials. As they prepared to leave, Judge Holloway added, I should warn you, once these warrants are executed, Blackburn will know exactly who is responsible. Until he is in custody, all of you should exercise extreme caution." Outside the courthouse, Harker was jubilant despite the warning. "The warrants will be dispatched to Sheriff Riley in Pine Creek and to the federal marshal here in Denver. With luck, Blackburn will be in custody within days." Adam wasn't quite ready to celebrate. "Until then, we need to be vigilant. Blackburn won't go quietly." They decided that Bridget and Clara would stay together at a different boarding house, one where they weren't known, while Adam remained at their original lodgings to avoid arousing suspicion. Harker would continue his work at the law office, protected by the official nature of the proceedings now underway. As Adam escorted the women to their new temporary home, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The streets of Denver were busy with midday traffic, offering too many places for observers to hide. "Be careful," he told Bridget as they said goodbye outside the boarding house. "Don't go out alone, even for a moment." She nodded, understanding the danger as well as he did. "You too," she said, her hand lingering on his arm. "We've come too far to lose now." Adam spent a restless afternoon and evening at the original boarding house, alternating between watching the street from his window and pacing his small room. When night fell, he debated going to check on Bridget, but decided against it. Moving around after dark would only make him an easier target. He was just preparing for another sleepless night when a sharp knock came at his door. Instantly alert, Adam reached for his revolver before approaching the door. "Who is it?" he called. "Telegram for Mr. Prescott," came the reply, a young boy's voice, not one of Blackburn's men. Adam opened the door cautiously to find a messenger boy holding out an envelope. He tipped the boy and closed the door before tearing open the message. It was from Sheriff Riley. "Blackburn gone, stop left ranch before warrants arrived, stop believed headed to Denver, stop use caution." Adam crumpled the telegram in his fist. If Blackburn was already in Denver, they were in immediate danger. He needed to warn Bridget and Clara. Despite the risk of moving at night, Adam slipped out of the boarding house, keeping to shadows and side streets as he made his way across town. He was within a block of the women's lodgings when he noticed something wrong. Too many men loitering on a street that should have been quiet at this hour. Blackburn's men. They had found Bridget. Adam retreated, circling around to approach the boarding house from the rear. The back entrance was unguarded, either an oversight or because Blackburn had limited men available. Adam slipped inside and made his way silently up the back stairs. Bridget and Clara were sharing a room on the second floor. Adam knocked softly, using the pattern he and Bridget had established. 2 quick taps, a pause, then 3 more. The door opened a crack and Bridget's relieved face appeared. "Adam, what are you doing here?" "Blackburn's men are outside," he said urgently, stepping into the room. "He's in Denver, left the ranch before the warrants arrived." Clara, who had been reading by a small lamp, stood up in alarm. "How did they find us?" "Someone must have talked, maybe someone at the courthouse, or someone who saw us come here." Adam moved to the window, carefully peering out at the street below. "There are at least 4 men I can see, probably more we can't." "What do we do?" Bridget asked, her voice steady despite the danger. Adam considered their options. They could try to slip out the back way, but if Blackburn's men were watching properly, they would be seen. They could stay put and hope for help to arrive, but that was a dangerous gamble. "Is there another way out?" he asked. "A service entrance, maybe, or a connecting building." Clara shook her head. "Just the front door and back door, and our room faces the street. They'll see us if we try to climb out." Adam was about to suggest they try the back way regardless when a new voice spoke from the doorway. "You always were resourceful, Prescott. I'll give you that." Warren Blackburn stood in the open doorway, a revolver in his hand. He was a tall man, powerfully built despite his 50-odd years, with cold eyes and a face that might have been handsome if not for the cruelty etched into its lines. Behind him stood 2 more armed men, blocking any hope of escape. "Blackburn," Adam acknowledged, his mind racing. His own gun was holstered at his hip, but he would never clear leather before Blackburn shot him. "I've been looking forward to meeting the man who stole my property," Blackburn said, his gaze shifting to Bridget, "and to reclaiming what's mine." "I was never yours," Bridget said, her voice surprisingly strong, "and I never will be again." Blackburn's mouth twisted in an ugly smile. "The brand on your back says different, girl." He turned his attention back to Adam. "As for you, there's a handsome price on your head for theft and kidnapping, dead or alive." "There's a price on your head too," Adam replied evenly. "For imprisonment, assault, and violating the 13th Amendment. Judge Holloway issued the warrants this morning." Something flickered in Blackburn's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or concern, but it was quickly masked. "Warrants based on lies and the word of ungrateful servants. It won't stand." He gestured with his gun. "Now, all of you are coming with me. We're going to take a little trip back to the ranch where we can sort this out properly." "We're not going anywhere with you," Clara spoke up, her face pale but determined. Blackburn's expression hardened. "I wasn't asking, Clara." "You ran once. You won't get the chance again." The tension in the room was palpable. Adam knew they couldn't allow themselves to be taken once at the ranch. Blackburn would ensure they never testified against him. "Think carefully, Blackburn," Adam said, playing for time. "Kidnapping a witness who's already testified before a judge, assaulting a lawyer's clients, you'll be digging your grave deeper." "I'll take my chances," Blackburn replied coldly. "The law's a long way from my ranch." A floorboard creaked in the hallway behind Blackburn, someone else approaching. Adam tensed, expecting another of Blackburn's men. Instead, a familiar voice called out, "Warren Blackburn, this is Marshal Davis, you're under arrest." The distraction was all Adam needed. He lunged for Blackburn, knocking the gun aside as it fired, the bullet splintering the window frame. They crashed to the floor, grappling for control of the weapon as chaos erupted around them. Marshal Davis and several deputies burst into the already crowded room, engaging Blackburn's men. Bridget and Clara pressed themselves against the far wall, away from the violence. Blackburn was surprisingly strong for his age, fighting with the desperate fury of a man facing the end of everything he had built. His fingers clawed at Adam's face, seeking his eyes, while his other hand kept a death grip on the revolver. Adam drove his knee into Blackburn's midsection, momentarily winning enough space to slam the man's gun hand against the floor. The revolver discharged again, the bullet lodging harmlessly in the ceiling before clattering away across the wooden planks. Freed from the immediate threat of the gun, Adam redoubled his attack, landing a solid blow to Blackburn's jaw that left the older man momentarily stunned. Before Blackburn could recover, Adam pinned him to the floor, securing his wrists. "It's over, Blackburn," he panted. "You've branded your last victim." Marshal Davis, having subdued one of Blackburn's men, moved to help Adam. Together they hauled Blackburn to his feet. "Warren Blackburn," Davis announced formally, "you are under arrest for false imprisonment, assault, and violation of the 13th Amendment. You will be held in the Denver jail pending trial." Blackburn's cold eyes fixed on Bridget. "This isn't over, girl. A brand means you belong to someone, always." "No," Bridget said, stepping forward with quiet dignity. "A brand is just a mark on skin. It doesn't reach the soul." She looked him directly in the eye. "You never owned me, Warren. You never will." As the marshal's men led Blackburn and his companions away, Adam crossed to Bridget and Clara, checking them for injuries. "Are you both all right?" They nodded, the reality of what had just happened and what they had narrowly escaped beginning to sink in. "How did the marshal know to come?" Clara asked. "Harker," Marshal Davis explained, returning to the room after securing his prisoners. "He received Riley's telegram about Blackburn heading to Denver and contacted me immediately. We've been watching this place since dusk, waiting for Blackburn to show himself." Adam felt a rush of gratitude for the lawyer's foresight. "Thank you, Marshal. Your timing was impeccable." Davis nodded grimly. "Blackburn's been operating outside the law for too long. It's about time he faced justice." He turned to Bridget and Clara. Ladies, you've shown remarkable courage. Your testimony will ensure he never does to another what he did to you." In the days that followed, Denver buzzed with the news of Blackburn's arrest. The details of his operation, the branding, the effective enslavement of people who owed him debts, shocked even those accustomed to the rough justice of the frontier. Other victims came forward, emboldened by Bridget and Clara's bravery, until the case against Blackburn was overwhelming. Adam and Bridget remained in Denver through it all, working with Harker to ensure the prosecution had everything it needed. They were no longer in hiding with Blackburn in custody, and most of his men either arrested or fled. The immediate danger had passed. One evening, as summer was giving way to early autumn, Adam and Bridget walked together in the public gardens. The events of the past months had changed them, both, Bridget standing taller, more confident in herself and her worth. Adam less guarded, more willing to envision a future beyond the next horizon. "Harker says the trial will be set for October," Bridget said as they strolled along a path lined with late-blooming flowers. "And that the outcome is all but certain. Blackburn will spend the rest of his life in prison." Adam nodded, relieved that justice would be served but more focused on the woman beside him. "And after the trial, have you given any thought to what comes next?" Bridget stopped walking, turning to face him fully. "I have, actually. Sheriff Riley wrote to me last week. There's a position open at the school in Pine Creek. They need a teacher." Adam felt his heart lift at her words. "A teacher? That was your dream, wasn't it?" She smiled, a full, unguarded smile that reached her eyes. "It is. Riley says the town council is very interested in my application, especially after everything that's happened. Pine Creek would be lucky to have you," Adam said sincerely. "You'd make a wonderful teacher." Bridget took a step closer to him, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. "The thing is, Adam, I don't want to go alone." She took a deep breath. "Riley also mentioned that the town needs a new deputy, someone with experience, someone trustworthy. He thought of you." Adam found himself at a rare loss for words. A deputy in Pine Creek. It was more permanence, more belonging than he had allowed himself to consider in years. Yet the idea filled him not with apprehension, but with a sense of rightness. "We could build something there, Adam," Bridget continued softly. "A life, together." She placed her hand on his chest over his heart. "If that's what you want too." Adam covered her hand with his own. "Bridget Cooper," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "From the moment I saw you running across that meadow, something in me recognized something in you. I didn't understand it then. I do now." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I love you. And there is nothing I want more than to build a life with you, whether in Pine Creek or anywhere else." Tears glistened in Bridget's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. "I love you too, Adam, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone after everything." He drew her closer, and when his lips met hers for the first time, it felt like a promise of healing, of hope, of a future bright enough to overshadow even the darkest past. They were married in Denver a week after Blackburn's trial concluded with the verdict they had all expected. It was a small ceremony, Harker serving as best man, Clara as Bridget's maid of honor, with Sheriff Riley making the journey from Pine Creek to give the bride away. Even Judge Holloway attended, his stern demeanor softening as he congratulated the couple who had brought a dangerous man to justice. Pine Creek welcomed them home with open arms. The small house that came with Bridget's position as schoolteacher was modest but comfortable, situated on the edge of town with a view of the mountains. Adam took to his role as deputy with the same quiet competence he brought to everything, earning the respect of the townspeople and the gratitude of Sheriff Riley, who had been shouldering too much responsibility alone. The brand on Bridget's back faded with time, becoming a silvery scar that was visible only if one knew where to look. It remained a reminder not of ownership, but of the strength it had taken to reclaim her freedom and her future. On their first anniversary, as they sat on the porch of their home watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, Adam presented Bridget with a gift, a small silver locket engraved with her initials. "Open it," he urged, watching her face. Inside was a tiny portrait of them on their wedding day, and opposite it, engraved in the silver, were the words he had spoken when he found her running for her life. "You're not property anymore." Bridget's eyes filled with tears as she read the inscription. "I'll never forget that moment," she said softly. "You didn't just save my life, Adam, you gave me back my humanity." Adam took her hand, his thumb gently stroking her wrist where a pulse beat strong and steady. "You saved yourself, Bridget. You kept running, kept fighting. I was just lucky enough to be there when you did." She leaned against him, her head fitting perfectly against his shoulder. "Do you ever regret it, getting involved, risking your life?" Adam pressed a kiss to her hair. "Not for a single moment. Finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me." And as the sun slipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the land they now called home, they sat together in comfortable silence, two people who had found in each other not just love, but redemption, healing, and the promise of all the tomorrows they would face, together and free. 3 years later, the small house at the edge of Pine Creek rang with the laughter of a child. Their son, Thomas, named after Sheriff Riley who had helped make their new life possible, was just learning to walk, toddling determinedly between his parents with a look of fierce concentration that reminded Adam irresistibly of Bridget. Bridget herself had flourished as the town's teacher, beloved by her students and respected by their parents. Under her guidance, the small schoolhouse had become a center of learning and community, hosting not just classes for children but reading circles and educational lectures for adults as well. Adam, now serving as acting sheriff since Riley's retirement due to health concerns, had found in Pine Creek the home he hadn't realized he was seeking. The townspeople had recently approached him about making his position permanent, an offer he was seriously considering. On this particular evening, as they put Thomas to bed and settled on the porch that had become their favorite place to end the day, Adam reflected on the journey that had brought them here from a desperate rescue on Blackburn's land to this peaceful life they had built together. "What are you thinking about?" Bridget asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. Adam smiled, taking her hand in his. "About how far we've come, about how lucky I am." Bridget returned his smile, her green eyes filled with the same love and contentment he felt. "We both are," she said softly. "We found each other, Adam. Against all odds, we found each other and made this life." And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky above Pine Creek, Adam knew with absolute certainty that this woman, this child, this home, this life was everything he had ever wanted and more than he had ever dared to hope for. The brand that had once marked Bridget as property had faded to a distant memory, overshadowed by all they had built together. A love stronger than fear, a future brighter than the past, and the freedom to be exactly who they were meant to be together.